Welcome to Enneaquest with me, Michelle Jean from the Wisdom Seeker Society, and Saffron Baggallay, our Enneagram expert. How are you doing today, Saffron?
I'm good, Michelle. Yeah, I'm having an ordinary day, you know?
Yeah, those are good. We were just chatting. It's a very strange day for us here. We're having kind of incidents of violence and accident. There's been some crazy stuff, which kind of brings me to this topic of freedom.
Yeah.
We judge or we see freedom as such a given thing, where I think there's a lot of illusions in our lives going on. We looking at the elections not so long ago, last week, um, in America, brought about by some kind of surprise news, where it's almost we're drifting between these concepts. I think cognitive dissonance comes up for me a lot. Like, what is the truth? What is freedom? What is this world that we live in? And how do we navigate it? And I think bringing it back to the Enneagram, each Enneagram type obviously experiences this in a different way, freedom specifically. Are you dodging
Yeah,
the sun?
I'm dodging the sunlight. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's just suddenly landed and catching on my car. Sorry, of course, as I begin this podcast, which I could go out and actually close the curtain, but still. So, it's really interesting because in the Enneagram, one of the things we learn, especially in the spiritual Enneagram, in the context of looking at it as a way to gain or get freedom through enlightenment or connecting back to one's essence,
Mm.
we actually talk about the fact that we are all in a delusion, an illusion, because we're living in a sort of Enya type prison.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to your point, what is freedom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Am I lagging? Can you
No,
hear me?
no. Yes, you're all
Mm.
good, I think, on my side.
Good.
But this is exactly my question. What is freedom? Do we only experience freedom within not structure, within limitation, I suppose, because all our experiences are based on limited, not knowledge, but limited understanding of what is out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I exactly. So that's what the study of the Enneagram in its basic form is, Michelle,
Mhm.
is studying how do we behave in a sort of neurotic, repetitive way that isn't really always in our best interest. Unconsciously, we don't realize that, obviously, but we're addicted to this kind of pattern of behavior, all of us, with this focus of attention, which creates to some extent an illusion.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
and and
yeah,
that's driven by a narrative that we allow in. So, you know, I don't necessarily watch mainstream media or the news or whatever it is, but a lot of people do, and I find that it's interesting how they then navigate the world through that influence.
yes, well, all of us navigate the world through the influences that we seek or come across or are subjected to in childhood or etc. We are all creatures of conditioning.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So for me, we get conditioned and we have this conditioning, and then our enneagram, the ego, which is basically the pattern of our enneagram type is basically the pattern of our ego. That
Mm.
is our coping strategy. That's how we then cope with our conditioning, our circumstances, our life, our experiences, etc. And
Mm.
that's why, unless we get back to essence, the sense of who we really are and not the mask. The type is the mask.
Mm.
When we can get back to who we really are, that's freedom.
Ooh, but now you've triggered me as the type is the mask. So in the in theory we can't change our type. Our type is how we navigate these patterns. It is how we protect ourselves, really.
Yeah. How we navigate our experiences.
Yeah. But to decide to not have a mask, or to be free from that pattern, once we're aware of the pattern, once we're aware of the mask, it no longer has that power necessarily, because we can separate the self from the projection.
Well, except for that, we're highly addicted to it. So it's very difficult to separate ourselves from the mask.
Unless it's not working for us.
True. But even then, we continue. Gluttony doesn't always work for me, but I'm still gluttonous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we think, certainly what I think is that our security point, so in your case, the 1, and in my case, the 5, our security point is a lot more in line with who we really are. Who 4s really are these very functional, very ethical, very principled people that just sort of have an innate sense of what's right and wrong.
Yeah. But want to look at it from a different perspective. So there's all these lenses, I feel, with the 4 as to how do I experience your life through your experience. Yeah.
In the ego, you see, the mask is who you really are, is more 1-ish, and then the mask is your 4. That's how you cope.
But I hate spreadsheets. I hate them.
Yeah. So it's not going to be around all the behaviors. It's going to be around all the essence of the type. Those qualities, those essential qualities, not the neurotic behaviors. The neurotic behavior, the spreadsheet is a neurotic behavior. It's a consequence.
Yeah. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah. But it's a very valid distinction to make, actually, Michelle. Actually, for the listeners.
Yeah, there is a need for order, but my kind of order, which looks very different.
And there's a righteousness. My mom is a 4. And my mom has like serious principles that she absolutely would die for and die by. Do you know what I mean? There's ways that you do things, 1s, and 4s, and you really stand by that.
It's interesting you say that, because that's come up for me a lot. With we've had a home invasion next to us, and for me, the freedom in how I want to experience it, in a lack of fear, a not living in fear element, is I would die for that. I would, I'm become the rebel, where I want to leave my door open. If it wasn't so cold, my door would be standing wide open right now, just for me, in my essence, to say, I want to be able to do things my way, even if it's dangerous, might be dangerous.
Yeah, that's the 4. So that's the coping strategy to the loss of connection with yourself. If we really, really boil it all down.
Yeah. And yet I feel like the 1 is the one that needs all the structure, that needs all the boundaries and the containment. So it's interesting for me to kind of navigate how we kind of live in paradoxes, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think for anybody listening to this who's familiar with the Enneagram, and actually even for those that aren't, one of the things that we must always remember when talking Enneagram is
Mm.
that behaviors are very different depending on the level of health.
Mm.
So I think, and I really do think, that if you've got somebody who's living generally in their sort of third or fourth floor,
Mm.
they're going to display,
Bless you.
excuse me,
Bless you.
sorry, they're going to display average to below average behaviors in the 1, the 4, and the 2, in all three of their numbers, their core lines. Because you, for example, if you're a lead type 4, you've got 1 and 2 in your profile.
Mm.
As a lead type 7, I've got 1 and 5 in my profile. Those developmental lines, if we are generally fairly average to unhealthy, all our behaviors are going to be average to unhealthy in all the types that we relate to.
Mm.
And the opposite is also true. If we're really working on ourselves and we actually sort of average and above 5, 6th floor of our building, I think when we're still living in this reality, unless we're a Zen monk, we're not really living in the top 3 floors,
Yeah.
But if we sort of 5, 6 stories, our behavior is going to be very different in all the types that we can relate to.
Mm.
Yeah. So for me, this notion of freedom is fascinating because I don't think, as a social scientist, I don't think we live in a free society at all. I mean,
What is free society, though? For me, they contradict each other, because
yeah,
in society there are
absolutely.
constraints and boundaries and things
And
like
there
that.
has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, anarchy doesn't work, and it doesn't make people happy. In fact, quite the opposite. It often ends in tragedy and dysfunction.
Yeah. If there
So
are
what?
others involved. But if I go live in the bush on my own, then it could be a free life for me as an individual.
Yeah, except for you'd probably be incredibly lonely because humans aren't wired to be alone.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
wired to live in community. So that in itself is a dysfunction.
Mm. True.
So, yeah, freedom is always an interesting question. And each Enneagram type is going to have a different understanding of freedom. And freedom is going to look different for different types. And they're going to have a different relationship to freedom and to the illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's all really an illusion if we think about it. This reality that we've created.
Exactly.
Looking at this, the land of the free. I always think of the US,
Oh,
and here we go with 77 million people choosing what doesn't seem to be free. But maybe it is an illusion. Maybe kind of, who knows what's going to happen with that?
and maybe it is freedom.
And
Because
maybe it
actually,
is.
who knows?
Yeah.
But I have to say, I do think that the American society is definitely not free. I find
No.
it hilarious that they're always talking about freedom. They've got so many bloody rules, for starters. I'm always terrified. Just going to America is terrifying because of all the rules.
Yeah, and feeling this feeling of being watched. When I
Yeah,
went this time, I was like, but yeah, I feel like I'm being watched. I don't feel free. So
exactly. I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
You jaywalk and you're going to get arrested. I don't know. And do you know, ironically, there are more people in prison per ratio to per person in the country in America than any other country on the planet.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's
Mm,
very interesting.
mm. It's a
Yeah.
very unfree place, in my humble opinion. And we've lived over the last 4 years in an increasingly unfree world. I'm sorry, but we are.
Well, I don't think we understand freedom anymore. I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
it's a concept we know.
Yeah.
Um, and Stephanie's saying I had a perspective shift that the choice may have been because he was not the establishment. and the rule breaker. And that's how I feel as well. We need disruption to be able to kind of come back to what we might think freedom is.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's maybe he's the right man for the moment. And
Well,
that's
we need to break down to break through is my new thing. I can't remember where I heard it from, but it's really, there has to be a breaking down, and who better than this disruptive? You want to hate him, you almost do. You do.
Yeah.
But there is disruption, and in that, I was thinking earlier, I mean, we can only experience freedom through change. If we stay in the same thing, then there is no freedom, because there's no new, there's no growth, I suppose.
Exactly. We can actually only experience freedom through discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I think he is the man of the moment. I assume we're talking about the Donald. But like all sexual forms, it's true. Our perceptions and our perspectives create our fears and our barriers. Exactly. Sweetness.
Yeah.
That's a lovely comment.
And you think
like all sexual forms, like Jake Paul, who's about to fight Mike Tyson. I mean, all sexual forms, whether you love them or not, they create and attract attention.
And are you saying that Trump is a sexual four as well?
Yeah, that's my belief, that he's a sexual
four. Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm the only one in the world who thinks so, but I'm going to stick to my guns because I'm always right. When everybody said that Nelson Mandela was an 8, I was like, no, he wasn't. He is a 1, and I'm right. And now people believe me. So I'm always right. So I'm sticking to that. Yes.
And what do other people say?
A lot of people think he's an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people say he's a 3, could be a 3. I think he's a sexual 4 with a 3 wing.
Interesting. And that 4 kind of brings non-linearity, like, I didn't, out of the box, didn't think of that one kind of aspects, where the sexual.
And the anti-hero. Also the anti-hero stuff, and it's okay that people don't like me, and he's got nothing to prove. He's not having an existential crisis at all. He's not an 80-year-old man having the need to prove himself. Not at all. That would be more a kind of 3-ish energy. The 4-ish energy is, I'm going to prove that I'm like, I can do this. I can change things. I'm strong enough. It's not I am good enough. I am rebellious enough and challenging enough to make America healthy again. To make America, like, that's his.
Make America great again, because, I'm going to break that thing to show you how broken it is.
Yeah, exactly. I do see that, Stephanie, what you're saying about the sense of betrayal. And I know that a lot of people think he's an 8 because of his sense of justice and injustice. And they think that that's why, he's doing all of this. I personally don't. I do think he is a massive patriot. I think he does genuinely love America and wants America to be great again. But I also think that he's got something. He's like obsessive about getting one up over you.
Because I want to be greater, it's that comparison that he does, the biggest, the best, and funny enough, the most people voted, that way. So obviously he's feeding into that sense of, so many people need whatever he's selling. He's selling the right thing. He's selling what I see as toxic masculinity. They see as stability, as.
But also, he actually did create financial stability for a large portion of the population in America during his last presidency. So, that's the 4, Stephanie, 100%. Yeah. So the 8, there's 2 reasons why I don't think he's an 8. And by the way, I think he's interjected a father who's an 8. So I think he shows a lot of 8-ish qualities, but I don't think it's his driver. When he built that monstrous hotel in Las Vegas, the Excalibur, whatever it's called. And
Yeah.
he, it was an insane amount of money. He had like $1 billion loan at the time or whatever it was.
Mm.
And lots of people's businesses went under when he went bankrupt, declared bankruptcy, and the whole thing went imploded.
Mm.
An 8 would never have left all those people sort of without work and financially ruined and all of that. Like 8s would never do that.
Okay, yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't have that same sense as I've got your back.
Mm-mm.
And I'm sorry, but that is not 8. He
Mm.
has a sense of, and it's not a I'm going to protect you energy. I don't think it's a I'm going to freaking show you how much better than you I am energy.
Yeah.
That's
But I'm
Donald
also
Trump.
not going to admit when I lose. When I lose, I'm going to, refocus on something else and claim the
And
win anyway.
to me, it's not a denial energy. It's a
Mm-mm.
smokescreen energy. He's a PR genius.
Yeah, I mean, he's selling Bibles for $1,000 a Bible with, what I mean? That the stuff that he's coming up with is just, you can't even make it up. So,
And he's a genius.
yeah.
He is. Just like Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a savage.
And I can
But
never do anything wrong. Yeah.
yeah, he can never do anything wrong. That's not 8. 8s feel remorse.
Mm.
This guy is like, it's all about, no, like he's, and sexual 4s are very, very strong. They are like a force of nature.
Mm.
This guy, I mean, he's a remarkable human. You may not like him, but the man demands attention.
It's scary because he gets the attention. He speaks to what is needed from a specific demographic, and I mean, he's pulled in outliers of that demographic as well, where
Absolutely.
I think a lot of that vote wasn't even for him. It was for change. It was for
it was also it was just not having the Democrats, not having what we've had before, I think, more than we want this, I would imagine.
And the consistency, because he's always that. He's not going to change and become the guy that's going to look after you.
That's what I love about him. He's not, I mean, I wouldn't want to hang out with a guy, and I'm not sure I'd want him to be my president, but I really, really appreciate his complete, blatant authenticity.
Yeah, which is scary. I mean, I wouldn't want him to babysit my children, that's for sure. No.
Well, I've seen him being pretty nice to his family too.
Yeah. And it comes back to the illusion, which part of what do we believe?
Exactly. There's so much misinformation and disinformation. This is really what I wanted to say today when I was thinking about this podcast and what we were going to talk about. What I really wanted to say today was there is so much misinformation and disinformation in the world. The only real freedom that any of us could ever hope for in the world today, for real, is the freedom within ourselves. The freedom in the conscious knowing that we are limited by this perception that is created by our Enneagram lens. And if we continue the inquiry into that, I think that's the greatest freedom we can give ourselves in the world today.
Sure. Well said. I applaud that. That is exactly how I feel about life, because there is so much being thrown at us. I think it is that turning within and going, who am I? What is that essence? And what am I seeing? Why am I seeing it in that way?
Yeah, that's it. What's my fixation and what's my focus of attention that is neurotic and can sometimes be hurtful?
Yeah.
I always want to say to people, why is everybody, like, the Don wants us all to be obsessed with him.
Yeah.
So stop being obsessed with him.
Yeah. But it is scary. I mean, in that space of living, in the US, where this is scary, that it's something that, as a South African, we've had to face some tricky governmental situations for a very long time, which, has maybe taught
I
us.
was more afraid of Joe Biden. I thought if he's going to fall asleep or die any 5 minutes. So that was scary for me.
Yeah,
I was
no,
thinking, yeah,
and Stephanie says the freedom to trust ourselves in our inner
yeah,
voice and to
that's
be
it. That's it.
lead us.
That's
Exactly.
all we have. That's
Yeah.
all we have. That's why on that Woman in Leadership, it's all about trusting your intuition.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it brings me back to this divine feminine, divine masculine, as to it's not about silencing either of them, because they both live in each of us. It's about lifting each other up. Yeah.
Yes, most yes, definitely yes. That's it. And I mean, it doesn't matter what the policies say. It's all actually our internal sense of self. You can make whatever policies you want, and I mean, I can't imagine that he's going to turn back time that drastically, old Donald, because I think he'd have a riot on his hands from women all over the world.
Yeah. And this is part of that. It's part of this whole conversation is in freedom, we need to express our freedom. We need to be able to stand up and say, hang on a minute, I don't care who you are. That is not how I navigate this world.
Totally.
I do not subscribe to hatred and segregation, and that's it.
Yeah. Like Bob said, mental emancipation.
That's it.
It's mental slavery.
Yeah. And that influences us a lot through what we ingest. I saw a beautiful image. Yeah. And someone, it was an Enneagram post, and they likened the ear to the womb, as to whatever comes through gestates there, and forms these opinions that isn't always ours.
Yeah. That's the truth. Yeah. And we are invited to inquire as to what is our opinion, because then there's a freedom in that expression.
Yeah, and to know that it is ours. It is not, I don't need to, bring you to mine. You don't need to, but in that expression where we can be, this is how I feel in this moment, and I can feel how you feel in this moment, and that's enough. It doesn't mean that I'm right or you wrong, or the other way around. Yeah.
That's desperately needed in our world today, because nobody's listening to anybody else. And so everybody else is wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong, and shut up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no movement in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Stephanie. Finding a deeper connection with ourselves within the relationship. Oh, yes. That's what life should be about. And yet it isn't in our world today. Like, it's more fake connections and, avatars connecting and people pretending to be somebody else when they connect,
Yeah.
Bonkers.
Once again, the illusion. So the illusion wins as to who am I actually talking to,
Talk about illusions. Exactly. So
Exactly.
let's get offline, everyone, and get into the real world and create real connections. Firstly, with ourselves.
Exactly. With ourselves. There's so much magic in there, and so much connection is possible with others once we've done that, while we do it, because it's an ongoing process. It's not like, oh, I'm going to meditate today and then everything's as it should be. I mean, it is. Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Saffron. Freedom is the illusion, I think.
It is, I agree.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, Stephanie. And we will talk again next week.
Yes, lovely. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful evening, everybody, or day. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.